Good evening, my friends. I hope this message finds you in peace, because what I am about to share may strike like thunder across the silence. In the Sahel, the desert does not advance quietly. It devours. Each gust of wind is not just sand. It is a job lost, a well buried, a family forced to move. This is not a story of faraway dunes. It is a story of human dignity under siege. Now, picture this, a young leader, Ibrahim Traoré, standing not behind a desk but on the prow of a ship without sails, without wood, but armed with 20 million living cuttings of cassava. His command is simple, yet shocking. Plant, protect, process. To some, cassava is just a humble root, long dismissed as poor man's food. But in truth, it is a billion-dollar cornerstone of the modern food and biofuel industry, a crop that can rescue nations from famine or poison the careless hand with cyanide. Cassava is danger and salvation wrapped in the same skin, and Traoré dares to stake Burkina Faso's survival on it. His vision is not about roots alone, it is about reclaiming land from the desert, replacing despair with wages, and lifting the African worker from dependency into pride. Imagine entire belts of cassava, each plant standing as a soldier against erosion, feeding not only families but also factories, schools, and clinics. Imagine payrolls where there was once only sand. This is Africa news you will not find in a headline, because it is not about a crisis. It is about a wager that work is stronger than welfare, that planting roots can root out poverty. The question is shocking, yet simple. Can 20 million cassava cuttings turn a desert into an economy? If you want to see where this journey leads, stay with me. And if you are new here, consider subscribing, not for me, but for the people whose future depends on these roots. When a nation declares war, we expect tanks, planes, and soldiers. But in Burkina Faso, the war against the desert has been declared with a weapon that shocks the imagination. 20 million cassava cuttings, 20 million soldiers in green leaves and white roots, ready to march into the Sahel's burning sands. This is not a farming project, this is a survival campaign, orchestrated by a captain named Ibrahim Traoré. The plan is bold in its numbers. Each cutting, carefully selected, measures about 8 inches long and carries 5 to 7 buds. Each bud is not just potential food, it is potential employment, potential wages, potential dignity. The first phase deploys millions of these stems across pilot zones, stretching from the northern belts of Kaya to the frontier villages that stare directly into the desert. Teams of agronomists and local farmers, trained in new techniques, carry bundles of cuttings like ammunition into the field. The land is not simply dug, it is engineered. Bulldozers carve half-moon trenches that capture rainfall before it vanishes. Tractors rip deep furrows to break the compacted crust. Each stem is dipped in protective solutions to guard against rot, then inserted into the ground at a precise angle. Rows are aligned by GPS, ensuring machines can return at harvest without guesswork. The process looks less like subsistence farming and more like a military operation with soil as the battlefield. For decades, outsiders told Africa that the Sahel was uninhabitable, doomed to endless famine relief. But here, the shock is seeing technology once reserved for America's Midwest cornfields now guiding cassava stems in Burkina Faso. Drones hover overhead, scanning for moisture stress. Mobile apps ping farmers with alerts. Plant tomorrow, rain expected. Protect cuttings from sun. In villages that once relied on charity sacks of grain, men and women now coordinate planting schedules with digital precision. This is the main event, the transformation of the farmer into a technician, the field into a factory. But the heartbeat remains simple. Children carry water in buckets to young cuttings. Women stack cassava stems in shade before planting. Elderly men walk the new rows and whisper prayers that the desert will retreat. It is still human hands, not machines, that set the future in the soil. The scale is staggering. 20 million cuttings translate into nearly 250,000 acres of cassava fields. Each acre can produce up to 18 tons of fresh roots. At market, even conservative estimates point to hundreds of millions of dollars in annual value. But money is only one part. The true shock is what this means for employment. Tens of thousands of jobs, from field hands to factory operators, from truck drivers to lab technicians, are suddenly tied to the life of a root crop. Traoré speaks of this not as agriculture but as defense. If the desert advances, he says, we retreat. If cassava advances, the desert retreats. To the people of Burkina Faso, the message is clear. This is not planting for charity. This is planting for sovereignty. The cassava is more than food. It is a wall, a wage, a weapon of stability. Of course, the risks are real. Cassava contains cyanide compounds that, if not processed correctly, can kill. Critics ask, is it safe to build an entire economy on such a paradoxical crop? But the project answers with training and technology. Processing hubs will eliminate toxins, ensure quality, and transform roots into starch, flour, and fuel. The danger is acknowledged, but the payoff, food, jobs, dignity, is too great to ignore. This is the shock at the heart of the story. Where most see a barren desert, Ibrahim Traoré sees an armada. 20 million cuttings, each one a green spear thrust into the sand. Will the desert swallow them, or will they anchor a new economy? That is the wager Burkina Faso now makes. And before we go further, before we map out the factories, the jobs, the schools that may rise from these roots, I want to know from you, where are you watching from? Because this story of cassava and sand is no longer just Africa's story. It may be yours too. Leadership is often tested, not in times of comfort, but in the storm. For Burkina Faso, the storm is the desert, an invisible army of sand-eroding villages, farms, and the very hope of youth. Into this storm steps Ibrahim Traoré, not as a mere head of state, but as a captain at the wheel of a fragile ship. His vision shocks in its simplicity. Plant roots, create work, defend dignity. For decades, Africa's leaders have been told that survival depends on aid convoys, on loans tied with strings, on imports filling empty markets. Traoré rejects that narrative. His role is not to beg for food, but to organize production. He frames cassava as a national shield, each root both a meal and a paycheck, each field both a food supply and a line of defense. He calls the project Cassava 20M not as a slogan, but as a command mission. His responsibilities extend beyond speeches. He directs resources to mechanization pools, to youth training centers, to village cooperatives. He demands accountability, every cutting tracked, every harvest accounted for, every processing plant run with discipline. His message to farmers is striking. You are not laborers in someone else's scheme. You are guardians of the nation. This leadership is more than politics. It is a declaration that Africans will feed themselves, power their own factories, and restore dignity to black workers who for centuries were dismissed as suppliers of raw material only. The vision is to transform cassava from humble root to symbol of sovereignty. Yet the question still looms. Can a captain steer a ship made of 20 million living roots through storms of drought, pests, and global markets? That is the test of Traoré's vision, and it has only just begun. The numbers themselves shock the imagination. In less than 2 planting cycles, the Cassava 20M program begins to show results that many once thought impossible. Where the desert had spread like a slow cancer, now greenbelts stretch across the horizon. Each cassava plant is not only a crop, it is a declaration that the Sahel can fight back. The first achievement is food security, with yields reaching 15 to 18 tons per acre in the best managed fields. Burkina Faso suddenly produces more calories than it consumes. Cassava flour and gari fill markets that once depended on imported rice or expensive maize. School feeding programs now source directly from local fields, ensuring children eat hot meals built on the nation's own harvest. The shock is visible. In villages once fed by food aid, families are now selling surplus. The second achievement is employment. Tens of thousands of jobs have been created along the chain: farmers, transporters, processors, mechanics, quality inspectors. Young men who once dreamed of migrating across deserts for risky work in Europe now find steady paychecks in their own communities. Women manage village cooperatives that supply starch chips to district plants. earning incomes that fund school fees and household improvements. Housing projects rise on the edge of these new cassava belts. Profits from processing hubs are earmarked to build affordable worker housing. Rows of simple but sturdy homes, equipped with solar panels and clean water taps, stand as proof that planting a root can also build a roof. In towns like Dori and Kaya, new schools funded by cassava revenue are already open, while mobile health clinics powered by biogas from cassava waste provide care where none existed before. The fight against desertification is another milestone. By combining cassava planting with agroforestry rows of moringa and acacia alongside the tubers, soil erosion has been reduced by up to 40% in targeted zones. Farmers report that seasonal streams now last weeks longer thanks to water harvesting bunds built during the project. The land itself is healing. Economically, the cassava industry is no longer small-scale. Annual turnover already surpasses $400 million in combined farm gate sales and processing output. Starch exports to regional markets add another $80 million. Ethanol plants are in early operation, producing fuel that cuts imports and keeps dollars inside the country. This is not subsistence agriculture. It is an industry rising from the sand. But perhaps the greatest achievement is harder to measure: dignity. For centuries, cassava was called the poor man's food. Today, it is the worker's shield, the mother's paycheck, the student's lunch. Ibrahim Traoré has reframed a humble root into a national symbol. The message reverberates beyond Burkina Faso. That black dignity is not in slogans, but in jobs created, schools built, and deserts pushed back. And yet, as we celebrate these achievements, the storm still circles. Can these victories be sustained? Or will the desert return stronger? That is the question hanging over every new cassava field. No great journey is ever traveled alone. As Burkina Faso embarks on the audacious mission of planting 20 million cassava cuttings, it has not stood in isolation. What surprises many is that this project has drawn support from friends across the world, not through charity, but through shared purpose. From one corner of the globe come machines designed to cut labor hours to a fraction, specialized planters capable of laying stems with precision, harvesters that can lift entire clusters without breaking them, and modern dryers that turn fresh roots into starch within hours. All of these tools arrive with trainers who stand side by side with local youth, passing knowledge hand to hand. From another direction, flow innovations in water. Tiny tubes delivering drops of life at the base of each plant, solar pumps pulling water gently from the ground, and sensors that read soil moisture like a doctor reads a pulse. These are not simply technologies. They are lifelines that allow cassava to grow even in the driest seasons. Nutrients, too, are shared. Fertilizer blends rich in essential minerals are provided through cooperative agreements, ensuring each cassava stem receives the strength it needs to fight back against poor soils. Alongside this, expertise in bioenergy has been offered blueprints for turning starch into ethanol, gas, and even biodegradable materials that feed industries far beyond the farm. And then there is knowledge itself. Friends in research centers and universities abroad send training modules, manuals, and remote classes. Food safety, supply chain logistics, and soil management are taught through partnerships that see Burkinabe farmers not as recipients, but as colleagues. The exchange is mutual. One side brings tools, the other brings resilience, courage, and the will to plant where others saw only sand. The shock is in the unity. The Cassava 20M project is not a copy of any single model. It is a tapestry woven from the wisdom of friends scattered across continents. Yet a question lingers in the wind. Will these friendships remain balanced and respectful, or will history repeat itself with outside hands trying to hold the reins? The future depends on keeping that balance true. Every bold dream meets resistance, and the Cassava 20M project is no exception. The desert does not surrender quietly. It pushes back with heat, with drought, with storms that can strip young cuttings bare in a single afternoon. Farmers planting hope into the soil must often return the next day to find half their work erased by wind or trampled by livestock searching for scarce forage. This is the battlefield. The first and fiercest challenge is water. Rainfall in the Sahel is unpredictable, sometimes heavy in a single week and absent for months. Without careful management, cuttings dry out before they can take root. The project relies on water harvesting and drip systems, but not every community can install them quickly. For many, carrying buckets of water under a punishing sun is still the only way to keep the dream alive. Then come the pests and diseases. Cassava mosaic virus and root rot are silent killers, invisible until plants wither. Termites chew at stems, grasshoppers descend in swarms. Farmers learn to fight with organic treatments and vigilance, but the threat remains constant. One mistake, one missed inspection, can reduce a harvest by half. Markets pose another danger. Cassava has value, but only if it can be processed in time. A root left too long in the field becomes woody, losing starch and market price. Trucks break down on rough desert roads. Storage facilities run short. Electricity for dryers flickers. Every delay eats into profit and risks discouraging farmers who have given their sweat to the soil. And beyond the technical, there are social challenges. Coordinating thousands of farmers across vast territories is not simple. Suspicion can rise. Who controls the revenue? Who decides the prices? Who benefits most? Without strong transparency, even the best projects can fracture into disputes. These hardships are not reasons to quit. They are reminders that planting 20 million cuttings is not a miracle. It is a struggle. The desert is clever, patient, and merciless. Yet the people of Burkina Faso are more determined still. The real question is not whether challenges exist, but whether resilience can outlast them. And that answer is being written in every new cassava row. In every struggle, there comes a moment when the enemy seems too strong. For Burkina Faso, that enemy is not another army. It is the desert itself. But in the heart of hardship, something extraordinary has emerged. Resilience. The shock is not that farmers face impossible odds, but that they refuse to bow their heads. Day after day, men and women return to the fields, replanting what the storm tore out, watering by hand when pumps fail, guarding seedlings through the night against goats and wild animals. Children walk behind their parents, carrying smaller bundles of cassava cuttings, learning not just farming, but determination. This is not merely agriculture. It is inheritance, passed down with sweat and stubborn hope. What fuels this resilience is dignity. Every paycheck earned from a harvest, every bag of starch sold at market, every school lunch served with cassava flour is a signal that effort is not wasted. For the first time in living memory, many villages see their young people stay instead of leaving for distant cities or dangerous journeys across borders. Work, not exile, has become the future. Stories multiply. A widow in Kaya who once relied on charity now manages a cooperative mill. A group of ex-soldiers find peace in planting rows of cassava instead of carrying rifles. Young graduates return from the capital, using drones and apps to help their own communities. Each story is a fragment of a larger truth. Resilience is not abstract. It is lived, even in failure. The people rise. A harvest lost to pests becomes a lesson in better pest control. A broken pump inspires innovation with solar parts. Every obstacle is bent into a stepping stone. That is the character of this movement. The refusal to quit. The insistence on rising one more time than the desert can knock them down. The resilience of Burkina Faso's farmers may shock those who only see poverty on the news. But for those who walk the cassava rows, resilience is not surprising. It is survival. It is pride. and it is the heartbeat of a nation reclaiming itself. The question that remains is powerful. If they can rise here, where else in Africa could roots defy the sand? The Cassava 20M project is not just about today's harvest. It is about planting a future. To understand its power, you must imagine what Burkina Faso could look like 10 years from now if this vision holds course. The shock is not only in the numbers, it is in the transformation of daily life, from the smallest village to the national economy. In the immediate years ahead, the first priority is consolidation. Processing hubs must expand to handle the flood of roots expected each season. Storage facilities with cold systems will be built to extend shelf life. Transportation corridors, once rough dirt paths, will be reinforced into paved farm-to-market roads. With each improvement, efficiency rises, waste falls, and farmer incomes grow steadier. By the midterm, the project's second wave unfolds. Diversification. Cassava starch is not just food, it is industry. It becomes glue in paper factories, binding in pharmaceuticals, a thickener in textiles, and a raw material for biodegradable plastics. Biofuel plants convert starch into ethanol, powering vehicles and cutting reliance on imported oil. Cassava fiber feeds animals. Cassava waste powers village biogas units. What once was called poor man's food now becomes a multi-industry backbone for ordinary families. This road ahead means stability. Imagine schools in the Sahel funded directly from cassava tax revenue, where children no longer study under trees, but in proper classrooms with solar lights. Picture rural clinics with refrigeration powered by cassava waste biogas, storing vaccines safely for the first time. Envision homes built for workers, modest but clean, equipped with water taps and small solar grids, proof that agriculture can build dignity in concrete and steel, not just in words. Employment will deepen as processing grows. Technical roles expand. Lab technicians, engineers, managers, logistics experts. Youth once excluded from the economy will train in new academies that merge traditional farming wisdom with modern precision. Women will anchor cooperative-led enterprises, controlling revenue streams that strengthen families and communities. The labor of millions will no longer be invisible. It will be the foundation of national pride. And the environmental road is just as important. Every hectare planted with cassava, fortified by trees, becomes a living barrier against desertification. Soil organic matter slowly rises. Erosion falls. In 10 years, the vision is of a green corridor cutting across northern Burkina Faso, a shield of roots, leaves, and shade trees that pushes the desert back. Where sand once dominated, food and jobs now stand. The economic scale will astonish even skeptics. With conservative projections, Burkina Faso could generate over $1 billion annually in cassava-based products, rivaling industries once thought impossible in a landlocked Sahelian state. Regional exports across West Africa would strengthen trade, while global markets hungry for starch and bio-based products would open new doors. Investors, once hesitant, would see not risk but reliability. But beyond money, the road ahead is about dignity and sovereignty. Cassava becomes more than a crop, it becomes a story. Africa tells the world. A story where people did not wait for rescue, but planted their own salvation. A story where a nation chose to fight sand with roots, dependency with labor, despair with hope. Ibrahim Traoré stands as the captain steering this course. But the true crew is millions of farmers whose hands touch the soil every day. The future is never guaranteed. Droughts will come. Pests will attack. Markets will shift. Yet the road ahead is clearer now than it was before. Burkina Faso is not planting for survival alone. It is planting for prosperity. The shocking question for us all is this: if 20 million cassava cuttings can begin to rewrite the destiny of one small landlocked nation, what might 50 million or 100 million achieve across Africa's vast drylands? The road ahead does not end in Burkina Faso. It points outward toward a continental future. From a global lens, the Cassava 20M project is more than a national initiative. It is a signal. Around the world, Policymakers, investors, and citizens are asking, what does it mean when a landlocked Sahelian nation turns the desert into farmland? The shock is that the answer touches everyone. For the United States, the stakes are both moral and strategic. Food insecurity fuels instability, migration, and conflict. But when rural populations find jobs and dignity at home, the ripple effect is stability that reaches far beyond borders. A paycheck in Burkina Faso may seem small in U.S. terms, but its impact is profound. Fewer families forced to flee, fewer young men drawn into extremism, more communities standing strong. In this way, cassava fields become quiet allies in the broader pursuit of global security. For the global economy, the story is equally significant. Cassava starch is already a $10 billion industry. Adding new supply chains from Africa means new markets, new products, and new resilience against shortages elsewhere. Whether in pharmaceuticals, packaging, or biofuels, industries across continents stand to benefit from the output of Sahel fields. This is not aid, it is trade, and it opens doors for collaboration where both sides gain. Beyond economics lies symbolism. For centuries, the Sahel has been portrayed as a place of famine and dependence. Now, through cassava, it emerges as a symbol of ingenuity and resilience. The image of farmers planting roots into sand shocks the old stereotypes. It tells the world, Africa